Toastmasters, no guests today.
Who's the guy?
Marjorie is the
Oh.
lady. Okay? She has the other book.
Oh, she has.
Great. Thank you. Our mission, the betterment of humankind. Think no small dreams, right? So I wanted to start first with who is us? Who are we that I'm talking about when I say our mission for the betterment of humankind? I am speaking about us in our role as Toastmasters today. And I'm doing that because I was looking at how do I connect to our community? How do I take what matters most to me and really look at how do I make a difference in the world? And so as I was exploring that, and as I work in my writing on diversity and inclusion, I know many of you work on including newcomers and work together to build stronger communities where there's socioeconomic differences, where there's cultural differences, all those differences we work together, and many people in this room do, and there are each in our own way, to build a better community and to contribute to a better world. And here at Toastmasters, I think our roles here can help us elevate that to the next level. And without making it overwhelming, but making it something that inspires us and pulls us forward and works us through any fears that stand in our way. And to do that, I wanted to talk about our mission. So I gave you a handout, and in front of you, you have, it's also on page 2 of your Competent Communicator book. There's the mission of the International Toastmasters, the club, and each of us as individual Toastmasters. And that's something that I often look at. In my diversity work over the years, I like to look at where is the world today, just at a context. And that's why you often see me with this little world in my hand. Where is the world today? And where are we in this world here in Canada? And here in Ontario and here in Chatham, Kent, and then within my own camp community and with my own family, and then within myself. So I start here, I expand outward, and then sometimes I expand outward and bring it back down. And that process of going in and out in terms of our context setting is something that I think is really powerful to inspire us to move forward. So I thought I'd give a couple of examples and walk through that and play with that process of how we can do that. And so, and put it all ultimately into the context of Toastmasters. And I chose, although she doesn't know it, and because she's such a gracious and loving soul, I'm quite trusting that she'll be okay with this. I chose in my mind last night, late, Marjorie Crew as my example of this process. She goes, uh-oh. And I was looking at the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. How many have seen Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Does that ring a bell? No? If you're from a human resources background, I see some hands and some not. It's a very simple hierarchy that starts with our basic needs, and the theory is that we progress through different levels. We move around a little bit, but ultimately our goal as human beings is self-actualization. But we start at some basic needs for safety and security. And then we move through needs around love and belongingness. And then we move through to development, and then ultimately to self-actualization. And I thought that it would be helpful. I looked at both because I happen to know some of her visible community progression through from a community member in a part of town that was really struggling. And she was one of the first courageous souls to be willing to stand up and say, we have prostitution, we have drug addiction, we have problems, we have challenges, we have safety and security, basic needs that are not being met in this community. What can we do to change them? With that courage, she then gathered people in a sense of community and started a group and took a number of initiatives that ultimately became a group called East Side Pride that took a stand for that small neighborhood within the larger community of Chatham, within Chatham, Kent. And that ultimately transformed, that brought people together, and it ultimately transformed that community. But from there, with raising community awareness around that particular neighborhood, it also put a shot in the arm, I think, to the entire community, to our self-image. Boy, if we can clean up this, if we can make a difference where we look our worst as a community, then where are the rest of us in terms of what we can do for areas that are far more privileged and have more opportunity? And what difference can we make in those areas? And so everybody gets a positive contribution and a positive uplift from the actions of one and from others that align around that vision and align around that goal and take action consistent with that vision to create a community that can stand with pride. Right? And in that journey, people move up towards self-actualization as leadership. Whether or not Marjorie set out to become a leader, I don't know. Be a wonderful question. When the questions come, I think there might be more for Marjorie than for me, if we have time for questions afterwards. But what I'd like to point out is that at some point, what started out as a community piece there became a need for a broader involvement. I happen to know that at one point in the journey, there were needs that could not be met within that community, even with all the people standing up, without the help of partners. For example, when there were lights that needed to be replaced on the streets because the lighting needed to be better so the streets could be kept safe at night, and for the volunteers walking them and to reduce the crime. You had to work with municipal council. You had to work and raise the awareness in the broader community to help make that happen. That required leadership and speaking up in front of other people, going in front of council, speaking to the newspapers, stepping it up in terms of a level of capacity and contribution. That was not, as we happen to know from Marjorie's early speeches in the early Toastmasters Club, an area that was of great comfort for Marjorie. So it was an area of growth and opportunity for her personally, and also for her small community to help Eastside Pride grow its next necessary steps. And then ultimately for Chatham Kent, the more she developed, the better we became as a community. Because all those skills kept developing, and Toastmasters brought each of them along as she was already through a number of these, and then Toastmasters came along right along the time when she became a counselor. So that, for those who know, and without making this entirely about Marjorie, that speech part became more and more important as she realized that making a difference beyond just Eastside Pride and to help sustain the challenges and the changes that have been made within that smaller part of the community, it needed a broader step up. And at the time, her father-in-law, who had represented that area of the community for many, many years in the eyes of many in the community, happened to be retiring from his role of 30-some years, Marjorie, correct me if I'm wrong, as a counselor. And she stood up to take his place, but frankly, to be her own person and lead in a way that engaged the whole community. Because her leadership, when she ran, she was the top vote getter, and it was her very first time running for council. And so the whole community knew of the great work that she had done. So when I look at that and I say, where is Toastmasters in that process? Take a look, please, at the international mission, the mission of the club, and the mission individually. So the mission international is to learn the arts of speaking, listening, and thinking. All right? And it promotes self-actualization, enhance leadership potential, foster human understanding, and contribute to the betterment of humankind. That is what has been happening through Marjorie's work as a counselor, and Toastmasters was her attempt to stand up and say, I need to be better at this so I can serve. And it served her because she became an incredibly more effective speaker. We could rerun tapes of Marjorie's first meetings, and they wouldn't embarrass her. I'm not saying that she didn't have a level of capacity, but Marjorie's capacity to stand and deliver and respond at any given time to any council issue is tremendously developed today from where it was in her first days as a counselor. Now, I hope that should she decide to be Prime Minister, that I don't want to hold her back from where she's gone so far. I would suggest that a step that I would get behind is perhaps Mayor, and this is an unsolicited, unpaid political announcement. She would have my support, because that would be a logical next step. However, that's not the point of my speech. To get us there, to keep us engaged in what we can do, and I just use Marjorie as an example of what can be done and what she has done, but each of us has our own. Each of us has our own vision of what's possible for us in our heart of hearts, and I'd like each of us to think through in Toastmasters, whatever it is, Toastmasters will help make it better. We will develop our skills to think, as you put at the bottom, the commitment to self-development, and then within the club to develop our oral and leadership skills, so that whatever it is that's within us to give and to contribute, we can do with more effectiveness, so that together we can co-create a world that all of us can love. Thank you so very kindly.